Hey, everybody. You are watching and listening to the We Are Rizin podcast. This is your host, Andrew Benjamin, and I'm joined by a very special guest today. With us, we got Garry, who will be making his MMA debut for Deep at the Deep Tokyo Impact Show next week on the 13th of March, taking on Taisi Sakino in a very rare light heavyweight matchup. Very rare to see light heavyweight matchups in Japan. But Garry, we really appreciate you taking your time out to talk to us. This is your first MMA fight, and we're happy that I think we're probably your first interview for an MMA
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I was super surprised when my coach pulled me aside and he's like, "Hey, what's this message all about?" Because he doesn't read English too well, and I was like, "I think someone wants to do an interview with me." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, I was surprised, but it's cool. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And I'm guessing that was Yokata-san who was reading the messages. I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
Which was funny because I had no idea who I was talking to in my back and forth with K-CLANN on Facebook.
yeah, yeah,
It's the last person I'm thinking it is Yokata-san. Like behind,
yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking just so I'm talking to some underling, and whoever's there is like they have no idea who I am and what this is. Well, I was like, oh, I actually had a conversation with Yokata-san, much to my surprise. But
Yeah. Oh, you know him, do you? Like you've heard of him, or?
Oh yeah. Well, I know he's the I guess head coach senpai at K-CLANN.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think he's fighting professionally anymore. I think he retired though, right?
He's retired. He had a really good run in deep and fought over in one as well. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
But let's talk about you.
cool.
Who are you? How did you get into martial arts, and how'd you get into Japan as well?
So yeah, so I'm from Australia and I've been living in Japan for 2.5 years now. In September, it'll be 3 years, so a bit more. Um, yeah, I came over to Japan. Well, actually, like the very first time I came to Japan was just had no interest in Japan or anything. I just saw a sale on flights, and I was like, it was like $300 return Australian, which is crazy cheap. And so I was like, hell yeah, I'll go to Japan. So I went to Japan for like 2 weeks, had an awesome time. Like I didn't know anything about it before that and had just the best time. This was when I was in university. And so then, yeah, when I came back, I was like, wow, I think I could live in that country. And so after I graduated university, I went to university late, like 25 to 29. So I'm 32 now. So as soon as I graduated university, I just decided to move over and start working. So yeah.
Well, congratulations. Was there any cultural was there any thing that you had to get used to, or I mean other than the language, but was there like anything that was any cultural shocks when you moved?
Yeah, I mean, so when I did my my holiday that spurred the whole thing, I was in obviously the big places like Tokyo and Osaka, and then the job that I got that brought me to Japan sent me out into like the middle of the countryside. So in I think so I was in Kochi Prefecture, which is I think it's the second least populated prefecture in Japan. And the city that I went to, it's kind of like a, small village, is like one of the smallest places in Kochi, which is one of the, smallest places in Japan. So at first, when I first arrived, I got to the town and, there's no trains, no like buses, there's like one supermarket, one convenience store, no one my age. It's like either really, really young kids or just really, really old people. And so I first got there and I was like, huh, maybe I can't live in Japan. But actually, I ended up having a really good time there. I spent a year there, got and finished my work contract, and then moved to Tokyo. But I ended up becoming like really good friends with some of these really old people. We'd go out like drinking and singing karaoke or something with a, 70-year-old man or something like that. So it was a cool experience. But yeah, that first, I don't know, like month, I was like, what have I done? I need to
Mhm.
leave. But yeah, got through that, moved to Tokyo, and yeah, now having a blast.
Well, I'm curious to know, were your friends and family back in Australia, were they at all like, no, you can't live in Japan. You're not gonna be able to survive there. And was there any like reservations from people who you
Uh,
knew?
Nothing like that. It was more like my family kind of didn't want me to go because I might not come back. So they had no worries about, being able to survive or something. They probably kind of the opposite, like survive too well and just stay there, which is maybe proving true. So
Mm-hmm. Gotcha, gotcha. So,
yeah.
how did you get into martial arts? Were you always doing some sort of training, or yeah, just tell us about how you got into
So when I left high school, so I said I went to university late. When I left high school, I just started working, and one of the places I worked at was a gym, and this was like a weightlifting gym, but they had a really, really good jujitsu school. Um, in the same building. And so I started doing jujitsu and also started doing boxing and met a guy who his name was Adam. This is 10 years ago now, so I can't remember his last name. But he had fought kind of all around the world, nothing major, but he had done a lot of traveling and a lot of fighting. And he kind of took me under his wing a little bit, and we just started training together. He helped me put together some, kickboxing and boxing and jujitsu. But in like jujitsu, one day I popped like two discs in my neck, and suddenly for like the next 5 years, I couldn't do any grappling or anything. Couldn't even do like a clinch in kickboxing. So I just moved into just doing boxing. And so for the better part of like 10 years now, I've been boxing. Um, had to kind of drop jujitsu, wrestling, everything like, 10 years ago. So it's actually funny that like I decided to do an MMA fight now because I haven't trained anything MMA in 10 years. So they, yeah, it's kind of an interesting story how I ended up in this fight. But my yeah, my main thing is boxing. I've done boxing for a long time, pretty regularly. Haven't actually fought that much in it. Like I've had 4 fights, but yeah, that's kind of my bread and butter at least.
just to clarify, when you say are you the boxing, like traditional boxing or kickboxing we talking about?
Traditional boxing.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Were these pro or amateur with headgear?
Amateur fight. So this fight next week will be my first pro anything.
Yeah.
So
So,
yeah.
let's talk about the gym that you train at, K-CLANN. How did you connected with K-CLANN? Because there's a thousand martial arts schools in Tokyo, Triforce, there's a million. So you could have chosen any, but you went with K-CLANN. How did you wind up there?
Yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, part of the story how I ended up in this MMA fight, which initially I had no intention of. It just kind of, so I was like any good Australian story. It starts with me sitting around drinking with my mates, and these were mates from my boxing gym here in Tokyo, and we were talking about how like it's frustrating for me because it's almost impossible for me to get like boxing fights in Japan. There's just no one that's 90 kilos and does boxing. Um, so yeah, we were sitting there and we are like talking about how I could get a fight, and we were like trying to research some things. And one of my friends found that Deep was doing this amateur tournament. I don't know if you've heard of it, Future Kings.
Yeah, I think they're having a one next week as well, I think. Or
Yeah. So they're doing, so that's actually on before the event that I'll be fighting in. It's kind of in the daytime, and then the pro events in the nighttime. But yeah, so we've seen this amateur event, and I had a few beers in me, and so I was like, oh yeah, I could fight MMA. That's no problem. And so we sent them an email, and then I didn't think, much of it after that. And then maybe about a month later, I was at the gym and just got a phone call, and it was a chick from Deep, and she just started asking me some questions about like, my size and things like that, and asked me to come into the office. So I go into the office, and at first they were trying to convince me to do like a kickboxing fight because, I don't train MMA. And I was like, man, I don't train kickboxing either. So I might as well, jump right in. And so we were talking about it. She's like pulled out the gloves and showed me the amateur like MMA gloves and stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's no problem. They're not that much different from boxing. I'm not that worried about like damage or anything like that. And so yeah, she was still like worried about whether I could actually fight MMA. And so she called Yokota-san, and she wanted him to like put me through a trial to like test out if it was going to be okay for me to fight. And so she actually sent me to K-CLANN, and because she's got a good relationship with him. And but I didn't know this was happening. Like, I didn't know I was getting sent there for like this test run. All that I knew was she'd said, oh yeah, can you go to this gym tomorrow night? I go, okay, cool. So I didn't know if I was going to do like a class or going to just talk to someone or do sparring or whatever. And I got there, and it was the most, not horrible, I almost said horrible. It was the most intense 2 hours of training I think I've ever done. They just absolutely, put me through the ringer. And then at the end of the session, he called Deep up and told him, yeah, I think he can fight. And then after that, Yokota-san actually asked me to I was planning to go to a gym near my house because K-CLANN's kind of far away. But he asked me to just stay with K-CLANN, and he wanted to kind of help try to bring me up. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up at K-CLANN. And even then, I still thought I was doing an amateur fight. And then about 2 weeks later, I was training, and they've received this package, and it was a pair of gloves that I could use to train in because I only had boxing gloves. And I've pulled out the gloves, and I was like, oh, these are pro gloves, right? And your kind of someone's like, yeah, they're pro gloves. And I was like, yeah, but my fight's amateur, right? And they're like, no, you're fighting pro. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, sounds good to me. And so yeah, and now so that's how I ended up in K-CLANN and fighting a professional MMA fight.
That is so. In my career as an MMA reporter, journalist, whatever, this and also writing for other websites, I don't think I've ever heard somebody's MMA journey start with I was getting drunk with friends and I sent an email to an MMA promotion and that's how I got a job. I think that's got to be the most unique way that someone can ever start a career as an MMA fighter.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the years that I've done boxing, I'd always still wanted to fight MMA. I was just always worried about my neck because for like, yeah, a solid like 5 years after I did that injury, I could just so easily re-aggravate it that I just never quite went back to it. And then, yeah, we were sitting around, we found that amateur tournament, and like the amateur tournament they're only 1 round fights. And of course, you fight, 3 times in the day. I think the final is 2 or 3 rounds. But I was like, oh, yeah, I could do that. And there's probably not much chance I'm going to hurt my neck in that time. And either, I go in and I can box someone up, or I go in and I just, get wrestled and tap or something. I'm not worried about damage in the striking department. And in terms of, losing in a grappling match, it's not that painful. I mean, you can get pounded out, but the amateur gloves and things like that, I was thinking, oh yeah, it's not going to be that bigger deal. So I was like, yeah, I'll do the MMA fight. And yeah, and then there was just a few little step by step ended up in a professional fight. But the good thing is that like Yokota-san, he's like he's an awesome dude, and he's really, really strict. Like he's really, really serious, but in a really good way. Like when you do something good, he's the first person to tell you, but he's also like, yeah, the first person to stop you when you're doing something stupid. And he's sat me down and, told me like, honestly, he was like, he thinks that I can do this. So yeah, that's enough kind of confidence for me, I guess.
So, what is how is what has been your whole thoughts on this whole on the whole MMA training and a camp and all that stuff? Also, I guess the other question I also got to ask is, are you cutting weight for this? I don't know if you're cutting that much weight, or if any, especially for your profile. Yeah, just tell us about like just preparing for this fight, your first ever pro MMA fight.
Yeah, well, it's actually the opposite. I'm eating like crazy to try and keep weight on at the moment. So, yeah, once I'd started training at K-CLANN, and the trainings are a lot more intense than what I was doing. So I started dropping weight really, really quickly. Like within the first 2 weeks, I was down like 4 kilos. So yeah, I went from like 92 down to 88. Um, and this is like normal weight. This is not just like losing some water weight from training or something. And so I had to start eating like forcing myself to eat like crazy. And so now I'm sitting up around 92, and the fight's at 93. So yeah, no cutting weight, which is good. I actually bumped into the other guy, and he looks a lot bigger than me. So I think he's cutting weight. So it'll be interesting to see the yeah, fight day.
You talk about your opponent, Sakino.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
He has fought at heavyweight before,
Yeah.
as high as that. I'm just curious to know. So, have you watched any of his fights, or have you done any research, or you anything of that sort? How do you prepare for an
Yeah,
opponent?
so I've watched whatever fights I could find of his, and
In fairness,
yeah, I mean,
there's only three pro fights that he's had.
yeah. So I think I've seen all of them then, and yeah, I mean, he looks really comfortable when he's fighting, which is a big thing. I can remember my first boxing match, and the nerves got me big time. Like I still won the fight, but I was just surprised at how tense I was, how much it like affected my movement being that tense. Head movement went completely out once I, tensed up that much. And so watching him fight, he's really, really relaxed, which is, I think it's the most important thing in fighting. Um, like if you're relaxed, you can keep your stamina up. You're a lot faster. So that's I think his biggest like good point. Outside of that, I mean, it sounds maybe cocky. I'm not too worried. It's his opponents. They never like he didn't fight anyone with any like really good boxing at all. They sort of sat in kickboxing range, and they just kicked each other in the legs until one of them got tired, and then that person lost in all the
Hmm.
fights. So I'm not too worried about that. I mean, I'll have to, yeah, obviously deal with kicks that I'm not used to. But if I can get into boxing range, I think I've got a pretty good chance. So yeah.
What about clinching? Because it seems like some boxers are great at clinching. Others are like clinching is like they're like suddenly in a foreign land. What if it comes down to the clinch? What do you think? You think you'll have the strength in that?
Yeah, I think the clinch will be fun. My best thing in boxing is my distance management, and I can normally find the range where I can sort of hit the opponent. They can't get away, and they can't clinch me either. I can kind of keep that nice little buffer where you're not too far, you're not too close.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping it'll go that way. If I do get into the clinch, I've obviously been, training it, and yeah, I don't think it's my strongest point, but I'm not too worried about it.
And what about the other aspects of martial arts? Are you getting up to speed with like grappling, wrestling, takedown defense? Are you focusing on that, or do you want to just focus on your strengths, which is boxing?
Well, I've been trying to do as much as I can in grappling, and yeah, it's the takedown defense is a little bit difficult because he's a judo fighter. He's not a wrestler so much. Like when I've seen him get people to the ground, it's been through throws. And a lot of the time when we're training, I'm obviously not good enough to like warrant, one-on-one gym to myself training. So, I'm training with a group, and there's often not enough space to really train hard takedown defense. So that is a bit of a worry. Yeah, I'll just have to see how it goes. I'm going to try and stick to my strong points. I know what my weak points are. Hopefully, stay away from the ground game rather than having to defend takedowns. Hopefully, manage distance well enough that that doesn't even become a worry. I'm a pretty I can punch pretty well, so the idea is if he gets close enough to come into like clinch range or that kind of judo range, make him pay for it the first few times, and then hopefully he hesitates a little bit with it. So yeah, I mean it's definitely I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a weak point. But yeah, yeah.
What about the cardio department? Are you working on cardio or circuit training of that sort, or is that not something you're really focusing on? You just kind of want to focus on the martial arts and this and the
uh,
physical aspect.
Cardio is the main thing I'm focusing on. I've only had about 5 weeks to train for this fight. Which I mean, if you've got a good background in MMA, it's probably plenty. But I was kind of either relearning the basics that I'd learnt 10 years ago and had totally lost all, muscle memory for, or, learning some new stuff. And so I figure it's better to go in as fit as possible and hope and maybe rely on that a little more than skill, because I just didn't have the time to become a great MMA fighter in 5 weeks. So hopefully go in, use my boxing, use stamina. Use the stamina to stay out of that takedown range and lots of movement. And yeah.
So one of the things that always comes across my mind whenever I see a fight, usually with a Japanese person and a foreigner, I always sometimes try to think of, well, I look at Sakino has obviously, it looks like that Deep wants him to be like a light heavyweight fighter in their division for a long term. Do you think that they bringing you in because they want him to get a win? They think that they might think that you're an easy win for him or anything that ever crossed your mind that maybe that's why they're bringing you in?
Not so much that. I think they like the foreigner versus Japanese guy fights. I
Yeah.
think that's more of a pull for them. Um, yeah, I'm not too sure because at least what my coach Yokota-san is hinting at is that he thinks that I might have a chance of moving up into like Rizin after a couple of fights. He kind of likes what he sees from me,
Good.
and so I don't. And he's really close with Deep. Like that's kind of why they sent me to him initially to do this whole tryout to see if I could actually do the fight. So yeah, I don't think they think I'm an easy fight. Maybe Yeah, I think maybe more the foreigner versus Japanese guy is probably half the reason why I'm in a pro MMA fight
Especially with
5 weeks after starting.
especially that they can't bring in foreigners
Yeah,
for all these fights.
yeah,
What? So I gotta also ask as well. So as everybody can see, as I'm I don't know if my pen can point it out. They just have Garry,
yeah, yeah.
and in English letters, they didn't put it in katakana. Is there a reason
Nah,
why they're just putting why they're marketing you this way? Is
yeah. I was surprised as well. Yeah, I like so I go into the office, talk to them, fill out all the forms and everything, give them all my details. So they've got, my full name, my katakana name, everything. but yeah, they send me through the promotional stuff. Like there's that picture you've got behind you, and there's also a poster for the event. And it's just, everyone has their first and last name. There's even another foreigner on there, not a Western guy, but just from looking at the name. And, they've got his first name and last name in katakana. But then, yeah, I'm just Garry. So that was their choice. I'm not sure why, but hey, it works for me.
Okay,
Kind
because
of
it's just
makes
really
me
good.
stand out a little bit, I guess.
Oh, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. It just I'm just trying to figure out, I can understand, just the first name, but why would not have it in katakana? That's why I just find so
Yeah,
it's not like Garry is a hard name to translate into Japanese, as far as I know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. The lady at Deep who I've been dealing with, she has really good English and she really likes to use her English as well. And maybe she just, you know, was jumping at the chance to have an English name. I don't know,
Oh,
on the
okay.
poster. Not
Um,
sure though. No idea.
so so the other thing that's also unique about this fight is that's light heavyweight. There is like maybe three light heavyweights in Japan. Like
Yeah, yeah,
like when you get between like welterweight and light heavyweight, there's barely any fighters that are in Japan that Japanese fighters, I'll say that come into that weight class. It's below or for some reason heavyweight.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so like, is this like did they ever tell you like did why do you think there's so little light heavyweights in Japan? I guess that's what I'm trying to think about that are Japanese.
Uh, it's weird. Any like big person in Japan, this is purely anecdotal, just from my experience. Any person that has a decent amount of size to them plays rugby. Like every single person that is above like 70 kilos seems to play rugby in Japan. And I think they just don't get drawn to martial arts because there's still some like, the like the stereotype is that like Japanese people are really small and they are a bit smaller on average than Western, but there's still some like really big people here. They all just seem to love rugby and play rugby. So the guys that end up doing boxing or kickboxing or whatever, just seems to go towards the smaller side. And maybe the reason you get those big heavyweights as well is they're too unfit to play rugby. Not that fighting is, you know, I guess it's a more short, explosive fitness than rugby, the grueling kind of 90-minute fitness. So yeah, that's my guess anyway. But yeah, there are some big dudes here. They just don't fight.
Oh, they go into sumo. That's the
Yeah,
other option.
yeah, yeah. They're
Uh,
really big dudes.
so what? How are you? I guess all the other besides physically preparing, how are you mentally preparing for this? Because it is when you get locked in that cage. I'm assuming they're going to be using the cage for this show, right?
I think this one's a ring.
Oh, it's a ring. Okay, they change it up
Yeah,
for
yeah,
they change up for every show. So
yeah. It
okay, that's
depends on the venue. Yeah.
okay. So this is at Shinjuku Face. Oh, okay. I'm actually surprised that they would put a ring in Shinjuku Face because it's a really small. That's a small like venue. I don't know if you ever been to Shinjuku Face.
No, I haven't been there. I tried to Google it, and it looks like they do some like pro wrestling events there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't seen much outside of the ring.
Okay. So since it is in a ring, I'm guessing that when you did boxing, those were in rings as well, so it's kind of familiar
Yeah,
territory.
yeah. I'm very happy it's in a ring because in terms of takedowns, I think it's going to be a lot easier to avoid. A lot of those judo throws come from getting someone pushed up against the cage where they can't like move to like once he makes a switch to get them off balance, they can't move with it.
Hmm.
I've noticed anytime he does get a takedown, it's on the cage. So I'm very happy that I'll have sort of more leeway to move around in a ring. Yeah.
Hmm. Now, yeah. So just going back, I was about to say, how you're gonna feel when the cage is locked, but I guess once you
Okay.
step in that ring, how do you like? Uh, do you have anything that you're doing mentally before you step into that ring to get, to calm the nerves, or just, just make sure that that all that adrenaline that you don't get like an adrenaline dump or almost an adrenaline rush, and it winds up just like kills you physically.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting because, like I was telling you before, how my very first boxing fight, I tensed up real bad. Um, After that, being able to be calm has become one of my sort of best traits with boxing, and I've had no issues with that in boxing. But this being an MMA fight, I don't know if I'm going to get that same kind of like first fight feeling again, or if the boxing will carry over in that regard. So that's something I'm just going to have to kind of deal with at the time, I think. But in terms of like mental preparation beforehand, the good thing that I've got going for me is that, like, at least at this stage, I can still say to myself, like, I'm not an MMA fighter. If I lose this fight, like, I'm meant to lose, I'm not an MMA fighter. It's That's what happens when you throw a boxer in against an MMA fighter. If I win the fight, then I can be like, hell yeah, I'm a boxer that went in and beat the MMA fighter. And so in terms of winning and losing, I don't sort of feel much pressure with that for this one. It'll suck if I lose in front of my friends or something like that. That's probably the most pressure. But yeah, in terms of the actual fight, mentally, it's kind of, I'm more excited just for like the new experience of finally being able to jump in and have an MMA fight. I thought about it for, yeah, like pretty regularly, like since I had to stop training jiu-jitsu and things way back 10 years ago. So yeah, I'm happy to jump in, and yeah, the nerves will be, yeah, I don't know. I think they'll be okay. If the boxing side of things carry over, I think that'll be, yeah, I think it'll be all right.
Just curious to know who we favorite. Do you have any favorite MMA fighters or boxers? Anybody who you look up to?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always watched MMA, so always loved UFC. Way before I started boxing, even I first got interested watching UFC before boxing. And when I first started training, I thought, boxing's my bread and butter was like jujitsu and kickboxing at that time. So boxing was on the back burner, and now it's my favorite. But yeah, watching MMA has always been a big thing for me. So maybe, in terms of the way that I like fighting, I love watching, like, Nate and Nick Diaz, Max Holloway, those kind of like high volume, really relaxed. That's kind of how I box and how I try to model my boxing. I find that most people are so tense when they fight that rather than use power, I use volume, get them tired pretty quickly, and then you can start to bring a bit more power. So yeah, I like watching those guys fight. But and that's kind of what I'm thinking about for this MMA fight. I've been watching them again, watching how they manage distance to kind of stay in boxing range, not get the crap kicked out of their legs while staying in boxing range. Although Nate maybe has some trouble with that, but yeah, that's kind of what I've been modeling my MMA game plan on anyway.
Curious to know.
Probably my favorite.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
no. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Probably my favorite fighter of all time, though, is probably Matt Brown. Totally different style, but just an animal to watch and always exciting and just a monster. So, but yeah, I love watching the boxing of Nate, Nick, and Max Holloway probably the most. Yeah.
Matt Brown, one of my favorites as well. Curious to know, are you a fan of John Wayne Parr, fellow Australian John Wayne Parr?
Yeah. I mean, I've in Australia, I've seen him fight live a few times, and had some of my friends that I used to train with fight some of his sort of proteges, and yeah, he's a really cool dude. I mean, I'm not so much into the kickboxing style of fighting where it's not so much sort of movement. They kind of more stand in front of each other a lot more. I guess, when you can kick their legs, it, makes movement a bit harder. So I don't actually watch him fight that much. I'd rather watch boxing or watch UFC. But as a guy, he's a hilarious dude if you watch his interviews or podcasts or anything. So yeah, I'm proud that, he's an Aussie, and yeah.
Did you see the big boxing fight he had? I think it was 2 years ago. I'm forgetting the opponent's name. The one it was at that big stadium.
Oh, I'm not sure. I
Uh,
might have caught highlights or something, but I haven't watched any of his fights in a long
oh,
time,
okay.
all the way through. Yeah.
Gotcha. I know, and funny enough, he's actually not retired. He's going to be having a fight coming up, I believe, next month for one championship.
Yeah. And
Uh,
I think he's had a full hip replacement, which is
yes.
crazy to go back and fight. So yeah, more power to him.
Are you any other Australian fighters that you are a fan of? Like, I don't know, Damian Brown or Jake Matthews. Do you follow any or
Um, uh,
anything in the Australian scene?
well, Robert Whitaker is just a really,
Hmm.
really cool dude. He has some, like, I don't know if you've seen his podcast with his old coach.
Yes.
And they're just hilarious. He just seems like a really cool dude. Obviously, great fighter as well. So yeah, I like when anything good sort of comes his way. And he's been outspoken about, like, you know mental health and things like that as well. So seems like a just like genuine cool dude.
Mhm.
So
Actually,
yeah, like,
no, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say yeah. So I'm always happy if I see something good
Mhm.
go his way.
Actually, that brings up a great question I want to ask. Is as you this is your first pro MMA fight, but you have fought boxing. I'm just curious to know. One of the big topics of discussion with MMA or combat sports is stuff like CTE, concussions. Are you, I know you really look forward to this, but is that at all, do you worry? Is that at all something that's in the back of your head? Just something like that happening somewhere down the line?
Yeah, yeah, I don't really spar anymore like we do. Spar just very, very lightly, and almost there's times when you're sparring and you've got the other guy. Like, you could land a good punch at that moment. You know what the punch would be. You know where it's going to land. Like, it doesn't need to be thrown. And I try to make sure that I train with people that sort of have that same kind of mindset. Like, so we're not just belting each other for no reason. Work on footwork, head movement, and then I'm going to leave the brain damage to fight time. I mean, I obviously think it'd be very beneficial to have more, rounds under your belt before a fight, but I just don't think it's worth it. I get, I don't know if it's 70 or 80% of the benefit of, real sparring by doing kind of this sort of shadow sparring or light touching. And sort of none of the brain damage. So that's what I kind of do. And yeah. And then there was like Max Holloway had his best fight ever recently. Said he didn't do any sparring at all for it. So yeah, be interested to see. This will be obviously my first pro fight without like doing a whole heap of sparring. But I mean, we do. I don't know if I'd never seen it in Australia. It's really, really common here in Japan. They call it matchboxing, where it's sparring, but it's just really, really friendly sparring that everyone is kind of used to. It doesn't happen in Australia. When you spar in Australia, you're sparring. People have a hard time holding back, but it seems like it must be drilled into people quite early in Japan. It's a very common thing. So almost daily we do that kind of thing, and it almost feels like it's more benefit than doing the one hard sparring session a week or something like that. Like, I'm constantly keeping my eye in, constantly keeping movement and things like that fresh. Whereas when you just do that hard sparring every once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever, it can take a few rounds to like loosen up and get your eye in and judge distance and things like that. Whereas I feel like I'm keeping that maintained sort of daily by doing just no hard sparring, but just constant light sparring. Yeah.
So with this fight, you win, you get a knockout, or you get the decision win. You said that Rizin might be interested in you. I mean, do you want to? Is this something you would want to do? Continue on MMA?
Yeah, so I'm having an absolute blast training at K-CLANN. It's been amazing. I hadn't realized because I was still enjoying it, but my boxing training had become quite stale. Um, again, yeah, I didn't realize because I was still liking it, but the last like month, 5 weeks at K-CLANN, just every day has been like so much fun that like and really, really hard training, which like you finish the training and you can feel like really good about yourself that you got through it and you did it. And so yeah, I'm liking that feeling. And if the fight goes well, I mean, even if it doesn't go well, I'll probably stick with it. And if the fight does go well, then yeah, I'll definitely be staying with it. And yeah, yeah, I don't know anything in terms of the whole Rizin deal, but I know the boss of Rizin will be at the event. And they're kind of desperate for some bigger people, is what I've been told. So, yeah, there's the potential in the future. I don't think I'm anywhere near it now, but I think maybe in the future the potential's there.
Well, yeah. Do you see yourself? What would you ever like? Okay, so let's say you win this fight. Deep offers you two more fights. Those go on. Do you think that this could be something you long? Do you ever want to go back to boxing, maybe, or you think that even if you're successful in MMA, you just want to you would you stick with that or uh do both or even try
Yeah.
kickboxing?
Uh, that's a tough one because I really do love boxing. Like even at the moment, training at K-CLANN, I'm still spending like I'll do 4 days a week out at K-CLANN, and I'm still doing 2 days a week at my boxing gym just to because I like boxing. I yeah, I guess it depends exactly if say something like Ryzen or something like that did appear on the border, then I'd just dedicate to MMA. But as long as I'm just having fun, I guess I'd probably like to keep doing some boxing fights if they were possible. It's like I said, the reason I'm here in MMA now is because it's been just impossible for me to get a boxing fight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, boxing, if, other than in a way, there's really like it's really I can't think of any Japanese boxers off the top of my head that are like him. He's like the only one I can think
Yeah.
of.
Again, there's a lot of small boxes. Like there's boxing gyms all over the place. It's just everyone is just yeah a lot smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So there's heaps of fights to be had if you're 70 kilos and under. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Do you now I know you said you're putting on weight. Is there any chance that what's the low would there be if you could you fight at middleweight or is that way too low or whatever the equivalent of middle I apologize kilos is not my is not what we use here so I'm trying to think of what it would be whatever the equivalent of 185 pounds is.
in I actually don't know in MMA what the middleweight is in kilos in Japan because their weights go a little bit crazy.
About 83 kilos is what
Yeah,
traditionally middleweight is.
yeah, yeah. I could get down to that very easy. I think, which is what the plan is after this fight. Yeah. Your Kota-san wants me to drop some weight and yeah, go down there. Especially because like I'm not a tall guy. Like I'm 5'10", 5'11", maybe. Ideally, light heavyweight would not be for me.
Mm.
Yeah,
What I find is what I find interesting though that even if you do lose this, Japan is very interesting when it comes to MMA. Is that there have been fighters who have lost their first fight. Sakuraba. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There's a whole bunch of fighters that went on to have successful careers that don't win their first fight. So there's still even if you lose this fight, you can still get a career, blossom your career in MMA in Japan. It's not like out in the West where if you lose your first one or your second one, there's like nobody wants to book you or anything. But in Japan, it seems like you still have opportunities to at least continue on and avenge that your debut loss.
Yeah, especially for them if just it's an exciting fight.
Yeah.
I think more than winning and losing, they just love a good fight. So that's actually one thing that I am thinking about with the fight is like if I lose, I want it to be spectacularly. Like I don't want my only regret will be if I go out there, freeze up, and don't really do anything and lose that way. Like so the plan is to go out swinging and yeah, either win with my boxing, get a knockout, or you know, alternatively get caught while I'm going crazy trying to, wing a knockout. So
What about
that's
submitting it? What about submitting your opponent? Do you think that is at all a possibility?
yeah. So my my top game is actually all right. But at least in this fight, if I find myself in a top position, I'm going back to standing like as quick as possible. In the future, though, I think I'll be yeah. I think I could like like I said before. I initially started out with jujitsu as my main thing, and you know I never graded, but I'd gone into a couple of tournaments, no gi tournaments, and I won those. This is way back. But jujitsu was always my bread and butter when I first started out training. Just now, I just yeah didn't have the time to build up, I guess, the confidence to keep it on the ground if I have the opportunity to stand up. For the moment, I'll stand up. But yeah, in the future, I think it'll be a big part of my game.
Hey, who knows? You may not even realize it, but you may go for a heel hook and you don't even realize you're going for a heel hook and you might just tap him out that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've been working on my ground and pound as well, and that is fun. If so, yeah. If I get a knockdown or something, I think I'll look to land a few of those.
So also, I want to talk about I guess, the technical aspects of the fight. I think it's 2 rounds, I believe, 3 minutes.
Yeah, 2 rounds. Yep, five
Uh,
minutes.
oh, 5 minutes. Pardon me. Is there elbows allowed, or there's gonna be no elbows allowed for this?
It's full scale. So elbows, knees, soccer kicks,
Okay, gotcha.
stomps. Yep,
Do,
everything.
do you, as a boxer, is that something you had to get used to training and was using your elbows and all that stuff?
So for with my boxing for a lot of years, I actually incorporated elbows into my training because when my shoulders would tire out, but I still wanted to get some more out of the session, I'd train elbows because I could still keep doing sort of stamina training without blasting my shoulders so bad. Because when you're boxing, 6 days a week or something like that, your shoulders start to get a bit worn out. So yeah, my elbows are actually all right. I haven't thrown any in a fight, obviously in boxing, get in a bit of trouble there. But yeah, I'm keen to have a go at that as well if the opportunity arises if we end up in clinch range. The hard thing will be like the soccer kicks. I think will be hard to get used to. Yeah, hopefully avoid the ground again, using my boxing, my distance management to stay away from takedowns and avoid that.
But also, it's funny that a lot of fighters, they don't realize they can do sock kicks because a lot just since they're not allowed in so many organizations. A lot of fighters just forget that they can do that. That it's part of the rules that you're allowed to do that. So I don't know,
Yeah,
like if you have that opportunity, do you think that you can see yourself soccer kicking his
I've
face?
been thinking about it, and yeah, I'll keep it in mind. I've had the image in my head of getting a knockdown and then doing the shogun, like jump over the guard, stomping or something. But whether you pull it out in a fight is a different story. But yeah, it's part of the imagery at least.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was just curious to know. So, when you're not training, when you're not preparing for this huge fight coming up for yourself, is there anything that you like to do in your free time? Um, yeah, is there anything that you do in your free time?
Yeah, well, the whole COVID thing has made it difficult recently. Like Japan's, and normally I'd train straight after work, and then after training finishes, I might, go out for dinner with my friends or something like that. But that's just been impossible. So at the moment, it's just training,
Is it
training.
is Japan still in a state of emergency, or has that been lifted yet?
Still in state of emergency. Well, they've lifted it for a bunch of places, but Tokyo got extended. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
yeah, it's going to be a while yet before Tokyo's out. But yeah, I mean, before the whole COVID thing, I mean, this sounds kind of bad to list as like a hobby or something, but I like just going out for a drink with my mates and enjoy a bit of time. So it was kind of yeah, work, train, go out for a drink, and yeah, that would be if that's all I did, I'd be happy with that life. So
Oh, I'm sure there's gonna be tons of people that'd be happy with that life. Curious to know
yeah, yeah.
favorite Japanese beer do.
Oh, so if we're talking taste, I love just Asahi would be the best, but I'm a sucker for, I like the picture on the can of Kirin beer,
Mm-hmm.
the little dragon thing on the can of Kirin. So often I'll drink Kirin, even though it's for all intents and purposes a worse tasting beer, purely because I like looking at the picture. So
What about Sapporo?
Sapporo's good. Sapporo's just a yeah, it's a it's the steady guy. It's not amazing, not bad. If someone offers you a Sapporo, yeah, I'll take Sapporo.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. What about sake? Any sake recommendations? If you're a sake drinker.
Oh, no, I don't know any by name or anything like that. Anytime I'm drinking Nihonshu, it's always from, some Japanese guy that's buying it and feeding it to you. And just yeah, yeah, those are dangerous nights,
Oh,
those ones.
yeah. Have you ever tried habushu?
Oh, Hubshu. Yeah, 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 yeah. The with the big, like the snake in the bottle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I went down to Okinawa and tried that. Yeah, no problems.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. What were you saying about habushu?
Nothing important. I was just saying, the story with it, right? It's meant to help guys with their uh abilities.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Oh, that. Oh,
Yeah,
I've heard about that. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So whenever you order some hub shoe, they give you a look like, oh, it's one of those nights, eh?
in the end, have you, I'm curious to know, have you told your friends and family that you're going to be, that are in Australia, that you're going to be having this fight? And if so, what are their reactions?
No, I've actually kept it under wraps from all my friends and family in Australia. I'm gonna let it play out first, and as if I don't horribly embarrass myself, then you know, I'll let them in and send them the video. If I do horribly embarrass myself, I'll hide and pretend it never happened. But like as I said before, the only way I'll be unhappy is if I go in and just do nothing. I'll be fine with a loss because, like I said, I'm a month of MMA training. I'm probably not meant to win this fight. But if I lose and have a good fight, I'll be more than happy. And if I win, then hell yeah, I'll be extra happy.
I also just noticed you have a tattoo on you. Do you have other tattoos, or is that your lone tattoo?
I mean, I've got a couple of tattoos, but they're very stupid tattoos. I have my football number from when I was younger, and I've got the classic. You know, I got this. How old was I? Maybe 17. I can remember me and my friends went to the tattoo parlor and we had lied to say that we were old enough, and then he wanted a piece of paper from our like in Australia we call them stat decks, where you're essentially making like a legal statement that what you're saying is true, and
Gotcha.
you sign it. And so we went and got these stat decks and signed them. We're like, yeah, we want tattoos. And so I've got Carpe Diem on my arm, the classic deep teenager uh, seize the day, and I've got my football number on my shoulder. So yeah, got a couple, not real. I mean, the story of doing it with my friends and the good memories are good, but looking to get those covered up at some point.
It's so funny that everything, a lot of important things in your life seem to involve alcohol and or your friends. So I don't know. Is there
Yeah.
are you surrounded by bad influences both in the liquid and in a corporeal form or something? Because it seems like you get seems like all these things like, oh, I was with my friends and we got tattoos. I was
Yeah,
drinking. I got an
I,
MMA fight.
I probably am a I am a bit of a sucker for the liquid courage. I think I get some ideas, and I mean, occasionally they're all right ideas. I've been happy with this whole MMA decision, so I guess sometimes it works out, and sometimes you end up with a stupid tattoo. So it's
That's funny. That's so funny. Also, so one of my last questions is so, Foster's, shitty beer or good beer?
uh,
What, in your opinion?
no, I can't even ever remember drinking a Foster's. I think I drank one when I was in the States to test it, but I'd never even seen it in Australia. I can remember when I was really, really young, like a child, like, 4 years old or something, you used to see it in Australia. And then I think it just got so adopted by, like, I don't know if it's just America or other overseas. I don't know if it's in England or what. But yeah, back I can remember seeing it when I was a child, but since I've been drinking age, I've never even seen like the ability to buy a Foster's in Australia. So I couldn't even tell you what it tastes like.
Mm, I'll tell you what.
What do you think? Have you
Well,
drunk a Foster's?
yeah, it's pretty much garbage. It's the thing that it became famous
Yeah.
here because there was these commercials in the 90s. And this was like I guess like post Crocodile Dundee craze and all that stuff. So what
Yeah.
happened was that yeah, there's these commercials for this beer, and then there was a famous line at the end: Foster's, Australian for beer. And that's like there's this big association with Foster's being like the beer of Australia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I don't even know if it is.
I think once upon a time it was.
Okay.
Yeah. I can I can definitely remember seeing like big signs and stuff for it when I was young. So I think it was, and then I don't know, the Australians got sick of it maybe. But I can't imagine Australians getting sick of beer. So I don't know what happened.
That's so. I know that like it is like when I tell my Australian friends about Foster's, they just laugh. They're like, "That's ridiculous. It's not. It's not an Australian beer. It's barely an Australian beer at this point. Maybe yeah, like you
Yeah,
said, maybe it was at one point, but years ago it wasn't. But near now, currently, it's not.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's basically all the questions I have. The last thing I'll ask is if if you want to give a shout out to anybody, if you want to plug, if you have any sponsors, if you want to give them a plug. I don't know if you have any social media that you want to give out, for people to follow you or anything, and if you have any comments or statements that you want to make about your fight or and or your opponent. Floor is yours.
Cool. Yeah, I'm in the. I've hit the grumpy old man stage where I don't have any social media. If the fight goes well, maybe I'll have to start promoting myself and dive back in. But in terms of thanking people, I guess like K-CLANN has just been amazing. I would recommend them to anyone. There's people like from beginners up all the way through, highly decorated pros there. And the coach, Yokota-san, he just puts like equal time into everyone, regardless of what their plans are with fighting or anything like that. And he has just been awesome for helping me. And he's exactly the kind of coach I think you need. Like he's so like he's strict, but he's not strict in a way that makes you hate him. He's strict in a way that like when you fail, you feel like you've let him down rather than you know yeah. So he gets this like extra drive out of you where you're not just doing it for yourself. So K-CLANN has been amazing, and yeah, Yokota-san has been just absolutely awesome. And if I stick with MMA, which I'm really looking to do, it'll be because of Yokota-san. I think a different coach might have ended up back in boxing, but he's made MMA super fun. So yeah, thanks to them, and Deep for putting me onto them, and Deep as well for giving me the opportunity. It's maybe yeah, I don't know how often they put on an 0-0 MMA fighter who's not actually an MMA fighter, so I'm happy for the opportunity they're giving me. And yeah, my boxing gym, Liberation Boxing in Kinshicho, and my boxing gym back in Kochi with Tenga Boxing in Kochi City. That's about it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Do you have any comment or statement that you want to make about your opponents? Positive, negative? Floor is yours as well.
Nothing really about him. I just hope we both go out and put on a good fight. I hope that neither of us uses any like stalling tactics or anything that makes for a boring fight. If I could say anything to him, it would just be, hey, let's, one of us hit the floor, doesn't matter who. Let's just go and do a good one.
And for everybody who's interested, you can catch Garry taking on Taisi Sekino at Deep Tokyo Impact 2021, which will be next week on the 13th at Shinjuku FACE. I know there's a way to watch the show online. It's a Japanese-only website to order an online pay-per-view ticket or something. I'll find out the exact website and post it in the description box when I find it. But if I know we have some listeners in Japan, both who speak Japanese and English, it'll be at Shinjuku FACE. Buy your tickets to see Garry make his pro MMA debut, and hopefully, that 0-0 become a 1-0, Garry. We appreciate your time talking to us. And best of luck in this MMA endeavor. We hope this won't just be one and done. Hopefully, we'll get to see you go far, deep, pancreas, shuto, Rizin.
One thing I do like. I've noticed even in the good MMA fighters here, like boxing is really underrepresented in Japanese MMA. So it would be this is dream level kind of stuff, but it would be cool to come out and make a name as a boxer in MMA, Nate Diaz style or Nick Diaz style, where you're known for just that overwhelming boxing. So that's my goal, I think, at this point. Become the Nick Diaz of the Japanese MMA.
Oh, that'd be great as well.
Minus some of the minus some of the shenanigans, but
because those shenanigans, well, if we're thinking the same thing, those would get you really into bad trouble in Japan. So don't follow that path. Follow the fighting path, and the in ring cage. Keep that stuff in there. Keep that stuff in there. None of the outside stuff, please. I don't want to have to one day go on a website and see that Garry got arrested for substances that are not appropriate in Japan. I'll just leave it at that.
I'm a good boy. I'll stick to my beers. Fosters.
Good. Yeah. Or the Kirin. Stick with the Kirin, the real beers.
Yeah.
Or the Asahi. I think you said the Asahi was better. Right?
It's a better taste, but I do like the picture. If I drink enough Kirin, I might end up with a tattoo of that dragon on me.
Oh God, another story that would happen due to alcohol. But again, Garry, we appreciate you talking to us. And and also actually, if you can't watch it live, because I think it'll be on 12 a.m. I think Eastern Standard Time. I believe all the fights will be uploaded on YouTube that week, and they're very quick to upload these fights deep. So if you can't catch it live, at least you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Deep MMA, and Garry's fight should be there the next day or a day or two after.
It seems the next day. So check it out for sure.
Great. And again, best of luck, Garry. As they say in Japanese, ganbare desu.
That means you're gonna do well.
Oh shit.
That means you're gonna try your hardest. You say ganbate.
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 Yeah, that means You do your best.
Gotcha,
But
gotcha.
also you, Gambate, you do your best as well.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.